Welcome, my bountiful friends. It's time to get yourself over to the lab, start up the generator and practice your mad scientist laugh, because today we're going to be delving deep into one of the most genre-blending works of literary classics, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. A deeply ambitious, obsessive and emotionally impulsive Swiss scientist who's unable to control his desperate urge to procreate brings terror to the Alps and beyond. But how and why did this book come to be? What's the author's story? What was the novel's impact on literature, and how does it fare today? As usual, I'll be diving in deep, and as always, there will be as many spoilers as there are mangled corpses, and there will be plenty of opinions striking like lightning. You have been warned. The idea for Frankenstein was conceived during the summer of 1816, which was famously known as the year without a summer. It was unusually cold weather, caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora, which is located in Indonesia. It left Europe shrouded in gloom. Mary Shelley, who was then known as Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, travelled with her future husband, the famous poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, to Lake Geneva in Switzerland, where they stayed with another well-known upper-class poet, Lord Byron, and the future author of the vampire novel, Dr. John Polidori. To pass the time during the dreary weather, the group entertained themselves with ghost stories, and Byron proposed a challenge that each member of the group should write their own tale of horror. Mary initially struggled for inspiration, but eventually she had a vivid waking dream, and that gave birth to the concept of Frankenstein. She began writing her story in 1816 and completed it in 1817. Though initially intended as a short story, her husband encouraged her to expand it into a full-length novel. He also provided editorial input, which sometimes led to debates about his role in the text. Nonetheless, modern scholarship affirms Mary as the novel's sole author and creative force. Frankenstein was published anonymously in January 1st, 1818 by the ludicrously named Lackington, Hughes, Harding, Mavor and Jones in London. At the time, anonymous publication was common, especially for women writers, as it shielded them from societal judgment. A revised edition was published in 1831 with Mary Shelley's name as the author. This version included a new introduction by Shelley, in which she reflected on the novel's creation and its significance. The revisions made the story more accessible to a broader audience, and this edition became the definitive text that most readers are familiar with today. The characters of this novel read like a catalogue of tragedy. If visiting fictional worlds was a thing, you certainly wouldn't want to be in this one. Victor Frankenstein is the hapless protagonist. He's an ambitious scientist who studies natural philosophy and chemistry at Ingolstadt. He creates the creature, and things don't work out so well for him. The creature is the antagonist, and despite being scary as hell, he's actually a very tragic figure. Left alone and abandoned, he tries to integrate with humanity, but is met only with fear and violence. Things don't end well for him either. Robert Walton is the novel's initial and final narrator. He's an explorer on a voyage to the North Pole who rescues Victor and records his story. He actually survives and returns to England, and is one of the few fortunate characters in this sorry tale, so hurrah. Elizabeth Lavenza is Victor's adopted sister and later wife. The hell? I guess that was a normal thing back then. Anyway, she gets murdered by the creature. Henry Clerville is Victor's childhood friend and is a foil to Victor's ambition. He travels with Victor and supports him emotionally. Not that it does him any good, because he gets strangled by the creature. Alphonse Frankenstein is Victor's father, and he provides emotional support to his son and attempts to keep the family together after multiple tragedies, but in the end dies of grief. So another tragic end to a tragic figure. William Frankenstein is Victor's youngest brother, and guess what? Yep, he's murdered by the creature as well, in their family home in Geneva. Justine Moritz is a servant and family friend of the Frankensteins who is wrongly accused and convicted of William's murder. She confesses under pressure, despite being innocent, and is subsequently hung. Blimey, this is getting depressing now. The de Lacy family are observed by the creature during his self-education in the wilderness. The blind old man is the family patriarch and the only one who initially shows the creature any kindness. The de Lacy son, Felix, is a protective and passionate individual. The creature observes him from a distance, admiring his dedication to his family and his love for Safi, Felix's fiancée. Through Felix's actions and conversations, the creature learns about human relationships, morality, and the complexities of society. When the creature finally decides to reveal himself to the de Lacy family, he approaches the blind father first, hoping for a compassionate response. However, Felix physically attacks him, driving him away from the cottage. This violent rejection devastates the creature, reinforcing his belief that he will never be accepted by humanity due to his appearance. Agatha is the de Lacy daughter. She plays a significant role in shaping the creature's understanding of human kindness and social relationships as it observes her from a distance. It notes her gentle demeanour and devotion to her family. He watches as she cares for her father and brother, and learns about human emotions and compassion through her actions. She flees along with the rest of the de Lacys after they discover the creature's presence, which in hindsight might be a blessing because none of them actually get murdered. But he does smash their cottage up. The novel centres on the character of Victor Frankenstein, who is a young scientist whose hubris leads him to play God, with devastating consequences. The story opens with letters from an Arctic explorer, Captain Walton, to his sister detailing voyage to discover uncharted territories. During the journey he encounters Victor, who is stranded on the ice and close to death. Victor recounts his tragic life story, which forms the narrative of the book. Victor grows up in Geneva, Switzerland, in a loving, supportive family. His early fascination with natural philosophy and the works of alchemists drives him to pursue a deeper understanding of life and its mysteries. His subsequent studies at the University of Ingolstadt lead him to become obsessed with unlocking the secret of creating life. After years of experimentation, he finally succeeds in bringing a creature to life by reanimating a stitched-together body of human remains. However, Victor is horrified by his creation. It's a grotesque giant figure with yellow skin and watery eyes. He abandons the creature and flees in a state of panic and guilt. The creature, left to fend for itself, experiences rejection and isolation from humanity due to its monstrous appearance. As time passes, the creature educates itself by observing a family living in the woods and reading works like Milton's Paradise Lost. It becomes articulate and deeply intelligent, but also increasingly bitter about its circumstances. In a desperate attempt to seek companionship, the creature confronts Victor and demands that he create a female companion for him. Initially, Victor agrees, but as he progresses with the new experiment, he grows terrified of the implications. fearing the potential for an entire race of beings like the creature. Victor destroys the unfinished female creation, which enrages the creature. The creature vows vengeance and begins targeting Victor's loved ones. It murders Victor's younger brother William, framing the family servant Justine for the crime. Later it kills Victor's best friend, Henry Clerville, and finally Victor's bride and sister. Did I mention that she's his sister? Elizabeth, on their wedding night. Each death plunges Victor deeper into despair and guilt as he realizes the horrific events his ambition has resulted in. Consumed by the need for his own revenge, Victor devotes the remainder of his life to pursuing the creature across continents, culminating in the frozen Arctic, where he meets Walton. As Victor nears death, he warns Walton of the dangers of unrestrained ambition and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. He dies shortly after, and the creature appears to grieve over his creator's lifeless body. It laments its own misery and loneliness, declaring its intent to end its life by setting fire to itself in the Arctic wilderness. The novel ends with the creature disappearing into the icy darkness, leaving Walton and the readers to reflect on the tragic consequences of unfettered human ambition. The novel is very clearly a creation of the 19th century, and the language therefore tends to sound flowery and even verbose in comparison to today's preference for minimalist prose. Characters have a tendency to be over-elaborate in their descriptions when speaking with other characters, and are often explicitly justifying their thoughts and feelings to the other party. The principal means of communication is via a series of first-person narrations that are often delivered via letter correspondence, which again is symbolic as the primary means of distance communication of that time. This literary technique does, however, enable the reader to directly experience the narrator's inner thoughts, feelings and motives, so much doubt is removed. One of the more interesting points of Shelley's writing is the narrative structure employed. We receive the story through three main narrators. We begin and end the story with Captain Walton's letters to his sister. He serves as the representative of civilized society. We then receive Victor Frankenstein's testimony, and he is symbolic of the individual who has strayed or transgressed from the path of normality. And within Victor's testimony, we then receive the creature's first-person recounting of his experiences. Its tale is literally at the heart of the novel. The creature is the outsider and is furthest away from society. Each of the narrators connects to the rest, and each one struggles to make sense of the other's experiences. This structure is also mirrored in the geographical movements of the story. The tale starts at the heart of civilized Europe and then ends up in the desolate Arctic wastes, the furthest removed a person can be from society and its rules and norms. Moments of wonder and beauty are intersped with scenes of horror and despair. For example, Victor's initial excitement over his scientific discoveries quickly turns to terror when he realizes the consequences of his ambition. This tonal shift reflects the unpredictability and duality of human experience, highlighting themes of creation and destruction, hope and desolation. Frankenstein's atmosphere is rich with the terrible war of geographical nature. The descriptions of the Alps, the forests and the Arctic ice fields evoke a sense of majesty and vast scale, illustrating the romantic idealization of nature as both magnificent and indifferent. And then there's the potent sense of supernatural dread. The reader is left with the anticipation of the creature's dreadful actions very early on, and there's a real sense of Victor being stalked. When the creature does turn up, it is most definitely not the lumbering zombie-like creature portrayed by Boris Karloff in the film adaptation of the 1930s. The original version has unnatural strength and agility, It is swift and stealthy, capable of moving with remarkable speed despite its large and grotesque appearance. This agility allows it to evade capture and pursue Victor across vast distances, including the icy Arctic wilderness. It inspires a real sense of terror as it leaves mangled corpses in its wake, which more than earns the book's gothic horror status. Academically, Frankenstein has been the subject of extensive critical analysis as it explores a wide range of themes such as bioethics, feminism and posthumanism, to name but a few. The novel has complex commentary on gender roles, societal exclusion and the consequences of unchecked innovation. The creature can easily be seen as a symbolic of the other, representing all marginalised and oppressed individuals. The danger of unchecked ambition is the most obvious of themes in this novel. Victor, seemingly like a lot of real-world inventors, is brimming with hubris and lustful of power and glory. He doesn't stop to think whether just because he can do something means that he should do it. No sooner has he achieved the desired aim of all his labours than he recoils in horror at the end product and tries to escape his responsibilities and obligations to the injured parties. A chain of unforeseen and horrific consequences are unleashed, not just upon himself, but all those around him, as well as society as a whole. No one wins from his ill thoughts through the relationship between creator and creation. This can be seen as a parent-child relationship dynamic. Victor is the stand-in parent. He procreated via science, and having had his fun, he now seeks to reject his progeny. The creature, who never asked to be born, is initially innocent and benevolent, but has to endure being utterly abandoned and left to fend for himself. When he finally becomes conscious and mentally developed enough to understand the moral crime and suffering inflicted upon him, he becomes malevolent and rageful. He subsequently goes on to destroy his parents' world, and ultimately they are both destroyed by Victor's moral failings. And again, the message is clear to the reader that the real world ill fortune awaits any errant parent and inventor. The dangers of prejudice. As previously stated, the creature is initially innocent and benevolent, and had he received due care and attention from the members of society, his terrible path could have been averted. But because the people he encountered judged him on his horrendous appearance alone and rejected him, he is left ostracised and resentful, his psyche warped and with no route to live a healthy and successful life left open to him. Ultimately, he becomes crazed with rage and goes on a murder spree and kills many innocents before ending his own life, alone and dejected. Frankenstein quickly garnered interest on its initial anonymous print run that resulted in enough popularity to warrant an expanded edition. Critics at the time offered a variety of assessments. Some, such as Walter Scott, admired the novel's originality and depth of its ideas. He praised Shelley's vivid imagination and ability to convey profound philosophical questions. Others, however, viewed the work as sensationalist and morally subversive. The novel's depiction of Victor Frankenstein's defiance of natural order, alongside its portrayal of the creature's suffering and vengeance, challenged contemporary ideas about science, religion and morality. Some did not approve of the novel's horror elements and its exploration of taboo subjects, dismissing it as overtly grotesque or shocking. It is also worth noting that there was significant societal prejudice against female authors at the time, and this probably influenced critical responses to some degree, particularly given that the novel's author was later revealed to be a young woman. As the 19th century progressed, Frankenstein became increasingly recognised for its intellectual and thematic depth. The novel's exploration of ethical boundaries of science and technology resonated with readers and scholars, particularly during periods of rapid scientific advancement. The creature's poignant reflections on its identity and existence invited philosophical inquiry, while the story's gothic atmosphere and tragic narrative appealed to literary audiences. In regard to its legacy, the combination of cutting-edge science gone wrong and a subsequent revenge story and pursuit has proved to have an enduring and perhaps even a timeless appeal. Interestingly, it was written so long ago by such an esteemed personage that the novel holds a special place as a groundbreaking early entry into two genres, namely science fiction and horror. Two genres that have come in for constant derision and dismissal from generations of literary snobs. Frankenstein was fortunate enough to be so early that it escaped this fate. Over time, it has come to be regarded as a seminal work of literature, lauded for its exploration of scientific ethics, human nature, and societal norms. In the 20th century, Frankenstein became a cultural phenomenon when its premise became alluring to early filmmakers. The apex of its popularity and where it entered into the larger social consciousness was Universal Pictures' 1931 film creature feature adaptation starring Boris Karloff as the creature, which solidified Frankenstein's place in cinematic history, though it's worth noting that it deviated significantly from Shelley's original text. The vast majority of people, even today, conjure up the image of Karloff's depiction rather than the significantly different version described in the novel, which has a much more baleful appearance and agile. The novel has been serialised and adapted numerous times and is still being so to this day. And like its sister 19th century novels, Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Stoker's Dracula, these stories have not only maintained their currency, but continue to evolve and adapt to meet the tastes of contemporary audiences, no matter when that time is. So, as already mentioned, this novel stands out for several reasons. It straddles two traditionally outlier genres, and it was an early entry in both genres too. It was of such high quality and impact that it quickly became a top entry, even to this day, in most popular lists, whether by reader popularity or critic choice. In fact, on the rare occasions Dune isn't being voted as the most popular science fiction book, then it's usually Frankenstein occupying the number one slot. And then there's the social aspect to consider too. In the 19th century, there was a heavy bias against female writers, and against what could be deemed as shocking or sensational content. And Frankenstein challenges on both these fronts. An interesting aspect regarding this is that while the novel was initially published anonymously, when it proved popular, Mary Shelley did not resort to using a male pseudonym, which was a common practice of the time, as seen with Mary Ann Evans, aka George Eliot, and Charlotte Bronte, who published her famous novel Jane Eyre under the name Cura Belle. The fact that Mary Shelley came from an intellectually prominent and upper middle class background likely played a role in her ability to navigate the literary world without the need for a male pseudonym. Her father, William Godwin, and her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, were well-known figures in literary and intellectual circles, which had afforded her certain advantages. But class and gender privileges and biases aside, there's no question that Frankenstein has endured so long and so strong because of the power of her writing and the strength and originality of the story. There's yet another aspect that makes Frankenstein stand out to me above many other novels. Whenever I discuss novels older than the post-war period, we normally run into a common issue of relatability with modern audiences. Times and morals shift significantly over time, as does language. This novel manages to overcome this challenge by having a timeless plot that has somehow managed to become even more relevant today than when it was first written. In the early 19th century, the pace of scientific discovery and innovation was seen as something both miraculous and potentially, or maybe actually, hazardous. The main fear communicated by the novel was that electricity could be harnessed to create new life, which isn't too crazy expectation when we consider that the human body is partially sustained by electrical impulses, and defibrillators can be used to restart someone's heart when they are technically dead, and pacemakers are used to sustain life. However, as it would turn out, electricity was never used to create new life in the end. Today, as I record this, there's a new cutting-edge technology which promises the creation and evolution of a potential new life form into the world. I, of course, speak of artificial intelligence, or AI. To all appearances, humanity is close to being in the same situation as Victor Frankenstein, and it would do well to remember the lesson that the novel teaches us. It's better to be a good parent than to be a bad one and risk being destroyed by your spurned and vengeful child. So, what are your thoughts on this multifaceted genre-blending moral novel? Which element did you find the most significant? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading and remember, just because you can bring a new life into the world doesn't mean you should, and definitely don't consider creating one out of bits of old corpses. Sleep well and good night.